It's becoming more and more commonplace for gamers to emulate retro games on their iPhone or Android devices. But one of the downsides to this approach is that oftentimes when they're emulating these games, they're just using the touchscreen as their controller. And for me, I don't like the way trying to play, like a Zelda Minish Cap feels using a touchscreen and trying to really feel like I'm getting that same experience, but I don't have the tactile sensation of a physical controller or device in front of me. And that's where companies like GameSir come in with the Pocket Taco, which I know it's a silly name, but essentially what this device is it's a controller that attaches to your iPhone or Android device and essentially turns it into a retro-looking Game Boy style device. And in this video, I'm going to go over what I really like about this device and why it really changes the retro gaming landscape for me on my iPhone, but also some of the things that it doesn't do so well. So let's take a look. So out of the box, to start, you get the, of course, Pocket Taco itself. One of the things I liked though is it came with a shell that looks kind of like the old school cartridge protectors that you get like on your Super Nintendo to protect your Pocket Taco. You of course get a USB-C charging cord because this is a Bluetooth based device. It doesn't directly plug into your iPhone or Android device. And then you also get a wrist strap as well as, some GameSir stickers and this little retro postcard that comes with the device to kind of advertise it. But it was packaged quite well, and I like the aesthetic of everything so far that I've seen out of the box. Now, setting it up was a little odd. Now, what I mean by that is to kind of activate the Pocket Taco, you have to open the clamp. And then once you open the clamp, you'll see that there's these green lights on the side, and that's indicating that it's trying to connect via Bluetooth. Where it did get a little confusing is there's two Bluetooth connections that your iPhone or Android or whatever device you're connecting this to will recognize. And one of them lists itself as GameSir, the other is DualShock Pro 4 controller or 4 controller. I may have said that wrong. So I realized after a ton of trial and error and trying a couple different apps, the GameSir connection doesn't do anything. You have to select the DualShock 4 connection, and then your iPhone essentially will recognize this as a controller. That was a little quirk, and it was a little awkward also because I wasn't sure if I had to keep the clamp open the whole time to connect it, or if not, and if you do, it's awkward because you're trying to slide it onto your iPhone and then go through the options to find the connection, but half your screen's obstructed. So that was, I guess with this type of device, I don't think there's an easy way around fixing that. But that was kind of an awkward aspect to the device getting it set up. But once I did get it set up, now that it is paired with my iPhone, it's super simple. I just open the clamp, slide it onto my iPhone, and it's in good shape. Now, getting into the actual usage of this device, one of the things that I kind of noticed out of the gate, and this might be a deal breaker for some people, and some people might actually prefer this, I found the D-pad was pretty squishy. Now, I do have a Game Boy Color that I have used in recent times in comparison, and I would say that there's a bit more of a firmness to the Game Boy Color's D-pad, for example, than this. Just a minor thing. I want to emphasize it wasn't a deal breaker for me. It's just something I noticed when I was playing kind of more intensive games like a Tekken Advance or something on my device, and it just kind of felt a lot squishier than it should have. The buttons themselves, the face buttons, the 4 face buttons that you have, I actually thought felt very good. They do have the same aspect of a bit of squishiness, but they also feel like they compress quite nice. So I did like how those felt. And I'll also say I liked the ergonomics of actually holding this. It did remind me of using a classic Game Boy, and it did feel firm with my iPhone. What I mean by that is I was half worried that my phone might kind of flop around when I'm using it, but I felt like it firmly held my iPhone in place, even with my cases on my iPhone. And it didn't feel like it was moving or shifting at all, which was great. So it felt very close to playing like on a classic Game Boy, which I thought was pretty cool. The other thing as well is you also have shoulder buttons. Now, This is going to probably be my biggest detracting point of this device, and I want to tread lightly on this because I know what GameSir was going for. They were developing something that essentially looks like a Game Boy. The problem is it feels awkward with the way those shoulder buttons are placed, trying to accurately press them. I did get used to it after a while, but it still felt like it just didn't feel normal, right? Like, I've reviewed the R36S and I kind of made a similar a similar detracting statement about it with those shoulder buttons, because they also felt awkward on that device too, to a point. But I'd say because it's a bit bigger, you didn't notice it as much, whereas with this, because it's much smaller and your hands are kind of tighter, it felt a little awkward, like trying to play a game like Tekken Advance, which was where you're going to see a lot of the testing footage in this video of. But trying to play like Tekken Advance and try to use the grab function, it just felt a little awkward trying to do that when it was so close in. I did eventually get used to it, but it is something worth considering. And I know there's going to be a demographic of people who may never use these shoulder buttons anyways, so this might be an irrelevant point for you. But if you're somebody like me who likes the Game Boy Advance era of gaming, you may find that these shoulder buttons kind of just feel a little wonky, which is unfortunate. Now, as it stands for the charge time, I only charged this once. I actually haven't even really checked, but I used this on a camping trip actually this weekend, as well as I've been using it all morning. I haven't really seen the battery dip much, which is pretty impressive, which suggests to me that this is probably a device that you're going to sparingly charge, which is great. But overall, I really like what GameSir is doing with this device. And me personally, this is a device that I am going to actively use. I like the feel of it, despite the fact that the D-pad isn't as great as it could be and the shoulder buttons are a bit awkward. I like the concept. This is nice and portable. It's very small. It can fit in any travel bag, and it just slips onto your iPhone, and you can play a lot of your retro games in a very close to authentic feeling way versus trying to pull out your old Game Boy Color or old Game Boy even, and have something that really just streamlines the process. So if you're in the market for a gaming controller or retro style way to play on modern devices, I think this, despite some of the flaws, is a really great device to really up that feeling of nostalgia.